Chairman, members of the legislature, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, present to you the information on the year-end 2017. This is my 23rd State of the Fisc. This report gives the legislature an update. It's close to generally accepted accounting principles as possible. There are still a few adjustments being made as the year is finished out, but these are the numbers. This is what we're really talking about, is what happened in 2017. First, I'd like to focus on the positive factors. The number one overall arching question that we have is, as a result of operations, what happened? How did we do? The overall results show us to be positive for $1,800,000 for the fiscal year 2017. That addition to what you normally consider the surplus, or as it's technically called, the undesignated fund balance, brings that undesignated fund balance up to $46.3 million. You'll hear figures about, oh, we have a fund balance of $61 million. Yeah, there's a fund balance of that total, but the balance between the 46 and the 61 are funds that are committed and can't be touched or used. The surplus is normally what you'll use to deal with a downturn or any extraordinary expenses that may occur. And as you know, you can only do that at the beginning of the budget year. The sales tax revenues to the county were up by a little over $600,000 at year end. We had a very strong Christmas buying season, which is reflected in the cash flow for early 2018. And I will mention to you, though, our over-reliance upon sales tax is something that presents to us great risk down the road. We've talked to you about that in the past. We've released a report. And if you think about it, because we're a retail destination and we've had such a tremendous amount of sales tax revenue, any change in buying habits, and what we're talking about is purchasing on the internet, will have more impact on us than it would on other counties. We did a study which we shared with you in the end of August that shows that we take almost 28% of our sales tax revenue in from outside our county. So we have overwhelmingly over and above what anybody else in the region collects in sales taxes. So if there is a shift, which we all know is going on, to the internet, that will impact on us very dearly. It will also have serious impact on the cities, towns, and villages that are our partners. Last year, we had an increase in $4.1 million in state aid. Total state aid and federal aid is still dwarfed by our sales tax revenue. The economic assistance was down by $2.4 million. The nursing home last year had $0 transferred, which is an improvement by about $4.3 million from 2016. As you know, the legislature stepped in when there was talk about us paying someone to take over the nursing home several years ago. You came to the fore. You put together a good, solid plan with a private-style operator, and that's made a tremendous improvement in the quality of care at the nursing home and to the financial results of the county. Some of the negative factors that will impact on us that occurred in 17, we had growth in expenditures by over $8.5 million, while our revenues only grew about $135,000 from the previous year. Our property taxes collected were down about $408,000. Hotel occupancy taxes, the hot tax, was down by $528,000 last year, and the potential for that to be much larger this year is there, particularly with the home rule message where we're paying for the state's facility on Eagle Street. Departmental revenue is down by $5.5 million. Some of that is timing issues. Personal services were up by $3.6 million. We'll show you a chart on that later to give you some of that. Medicaid was up by $1.8 million. Jail was up by $2.7. Health insurance grew by $6.5 million. Our educational costs were up by $3.2 million, and employee benefits are up by $2.2 million. Some of the trends that we think that you should be concerned about, obviously, represent a real opportunity. And in the jail, you know, from 11 to 17, we've gone up by almost $4 million, but the occupancy is going down tremendously. Wild idea, I asked the sheriff about it. He said, what about using any of those extra beds for opioid beds or opioid treatment beds, and he thought he'd already talked about it, and it's something that has to be approved by New York State Department of Corrections, but it is an opportunity. Medicaid is up despite the Medicaid cap. We're up $4 million on that in the last 6 years, and one of the things that I think we should consider is looking at getting a waiver from HHS to put some of the healthy Medicaid recipients on the county's health insurance. The cost is lower, benefits are lower, but it's the same benefits our taxpayers have and the county employees have. Retirement costs are up they went from $14 million to $21.9 in the last 6 years. And I think that one of the issues that we can look at as a way to treat that is the early retirement return to work part-time possibility. Personal services have grown significantly in the last 6 years as well. We've gone from $113.6 million to $125 million. If you look at that, we've also had an increase in employees. We've jumped 19% in the number of employees from year-end 2011 to year-end 2017. We talked about the report that we released to you in October about the impact of this ramp-up of cost for personal services, for fringe costs, and the number of people that we have is certainly going to have some impact on that. We need to start talking about how we can share some of our back room with our partners in cities, towns, and villages so that we can get control over this. Some other concerns, obviously, are the health insurance that's grown from $34 million to $52 million in 6 years. A lot of that's driven by health costs. I certainly helped myself when I was pounding you pretty good with the 2 years of cancer treatments, but the reality is we've had some significant increases there. We've also had employee benefits increase by almost $20 million in that same period of time. And I think the last trend that we are concerned and we think needs discussion is the trend for us to be anti-business. I think the county executive's proposal on mandating sick leave is an issue. I think it's a tremendous desire to do that, but I think there's unintended consequences to issues like that, and we have to really look at not making ourselves at a competitive disadvantage to surrounding counties. Some of these issues are better served being dealt with at the state level. That way everybody's in the same boat. If you look at some remedies that might be there for us to look at, I believe, and I think that you've been at the forefront on ethics and campaign finance reform. I think the time to discuss this is this year. I think that county elected officials should not be able to solicit funds or collect funds from vendors, bidders, or employees. And I think that there's an awful lot, when you look at the environment that we live in with the state capitol and what's going on there, I think you can make a compelling case that this is something that doesn't do us any good and certainly doesn't add to the civility with which we conduct elections. I think one of the other issues that presents a real opportunity for us over the next 10 years is to look at a county-wide recycling program. You can have a recycling cooperative. You can help the two municipally owned or municipally controlled, anyways, landfills to do that. We're looking at what the numbers are on the importation of waste from outside the county. That's a huge factor and has tremendous impact on all of us. The county, in Albany and also in Colony, has taken in hundreds of thousands of extra tons of waste from outside our borders. And I think it's something that we really need to look at, and I think it's something that you've also had some things. I think one of the other issues that presents a real opportunity for us down the road is the power district. We've had some very great success with the sewer district, and I think that if you look at the Green Island model for how they generate electricity at a much lower cost in a green environment, I think there's the opportunity for the county to look at doing this as well. And I would hope that that's something that's studied and looked at in the near future. The Times Union Center right now is on target for the debt service to exceed $175 million. We've paid roughly $112 million. We've got about over $69 million left that we're going to have to pay. And when you look at that, it's a net loss. If you take the hotel occupancy tax plus all the SMG funds that we received over that period of time, you still are short by $90 million. That means your taxpayers are paying $90 million for this facility that I think would be better served to be owned by the private sector. I think that's something we should look at or consider. I know County Legislator Signoraci has introduced a bill to look at working on a health insurance consortium. That's one of the major ways for small municipalities to save money. If you're looking at any group or any employer with under 100 employees, they're going to get slaughtered with rate increases this year, and there is an opportunity for us to do this, provide that, take the lead, work with other counties and ourselves to look at these smaller municipalities. One of the difficulties for the county to do this is the county is already fairly largely self-insured, and there's not a great benefit to the county to do this. But all of the cities, towns, and villages that are not a significant size would benefit from this. We've been talking to the administration for about 10 months on this, so we're very happy to see that the legislature is starting to move to look at and consider this. That is a real opportunity in the long haul to help our taxpayers. You may not necessarily see the savings in your budget, but if the city, town, or village that you represent has a reduction in cost of operating in their budget, you've helped those taxpayers with that. Some of the things that I think are opportunities for us as we deal with going forward, I mean, I think that if you look at the threats that we face, we've met them before. I think by working together and planning cooperatively, we can do this. We're going to have to share staff to do that because that's the #1 driving cost in our budget, the background cost in that. I think we have to reverse we need to change the idea of the pyramid. We need to be servant leaders, and I think that has to take place when we deal with the cities, towns, and villages as well. We can't always be looking to have us benefit and them not avoid that. I think we need to avoid the history of bad business deals on real estate transactions. We have a history, the big number. You go back and look at the absolute debacle for what we had to pay for the family court building. That's just one of them. But most recently, discussions about the hockey arena is another one. We looked at the construction for the addition at the at the Times Union Center, and that was originally going to be $13 million. I guess we had a consultant there that said, you need to have better controls, and the consultant was no longer utilized. We spent almost $20 million on that addition. Meanwhile, you're losing the revenues that were going to pay for that debt service because of the transfer of the hotel occupancy taxes to the state of New York, to one of their agencies. There is no other county in the state of New York having to do that. You're the only ones where that's happening. I think that the true objective of the county government should be about reducing poverty. If you look at the vast majority of what we spend money on and the things that we do, it's dealing with fighting what effects poverty has on the county and on the people within the county. And when you look, if you look at the national numbers, it's also true, you have actually more available jobs and people available to take them. But if the people don't have the skills for those jobs, they're not able to get there. And we have problems when you think about 3,000 employees on Fuller Road who've done very well. We need to have our poor have options and opportunities to get to those jobs. And I think that's the #1 obligation of the county, and it's one of the few obligations that we have that's enumerated in the New York State Constitution. If you build economic development that's not corporate welfare for the politically connected, if you start looking at I looked at it, I was 25 years as an insurance agent. The first objective that you had was to try and keep the business you have, retain those policyholders, then add new customers. Well, if we spend money to bring people from outside the county to come in and give them millions, or in some case hundreds of millions of dollars to do that, I believe we'd have better economic growth if we spent some of that money internally on our own businesses and our own people who are recipients of welfare benefits to help get people back to work. And you can have a tremendous impact. Not to get into the numbers, but when you think about, let's say, roughly 59,000 people collecting benefits of one sort or another, and a population of roughly 308,000 back in the last census, it makes sense for us to do something about reducing the number of people consuming, the number of people. So I think that we should have a real focus on helping the people there. if you could on the next slide. I'm going to try and finish up, but what we have here, it'll be on our web page probably tomorrow or the day after. DIS puts this up for us each year, and as you'll go through, you'll see the numbers comparing 15 and 16, so you can see the raw numbers and go through some of these things. You know, we try to highlight the issues that are serious and significant that would affect us. And next one, if you could, please. You know, if you look at, I mean, just if you go back to the sales taxes on revenues, you have a tremendous imbalance in what the sales tax revenue are versus state and federal aid. Personnel services are there. MMIS is nothing more than Medicaid, family assistance, and the safety net is our responsibility, where we pick up after 5 years 50% of the cost of anyone who's still receiving social services. You know, there's the numbers on retirement, health insurance, and the transfer to the nursing home, which was not there this past year, knock on wood. And these are the major 8 factors that are part of your budget. So when you look at your budget, the one-page sheet that'll outline for you the overall budget for the year, you'll see these general areas, and those are the general areas. And that gives you an idea of what it is. If you just think about this, economic assistance and opportunity, plus some of the other things in health and public safety, clearly indicate that we would be better served financially to spend more effort on helping people fight poverty and getting out of poverty and dependence upon government and get back to work or to work. And I think it's something that can build hope and something we will be looking at. These are some of the smaller areas and the transfers that go from as you know, the fund, you transfer money from the funds. Mr. Chairman, I stayed at 20 minutes, so I mean, I can go for longer or take questions.
No, you can't. Mr. Krause.
Lucille, you do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Connors, another exceptional job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm a little perplexed about a statement you made, and maybe you can clarify for me. Did you say something along the lines that Albany County is the only county, so when it comes to the hotel occupancy tax that is paying the state?
That's correct.
Could you explain that?
Well, the original, I was there when the original discussion was made. There was going to be a transformational project built in downtown Albany. It was originally talked about being $500 million. Then it evolved into a public-private partnership. The public sector was going to be something like $240 or $250 million. When that discussion occurred, it was agreed that because of the size of the project and its transformational possibilities for Albany, for the city of Albany and Albany County, that it made sense for the county to give up half of the hot tax, the hotel occupancy tax. As you all know, there's 6% there. The original legislation is 3%. 1% goes to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. 2% went to the county. When the additional 3% were added, we actually benefited for a few years, and that's part of the calculation we used on the Times Union Center. But now you've got, because the facility is fully completed, you're going to have the state get 3 points, or somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.5 million, depending on what occupancies are. So the upshot is that we're subsidizing a state facility. When this deal got downsized by the governor to a $63 million deal, that was the residue of the original money that Pataki had put aside for this. The 63 was left after the 12 million was spent acquiring the properties that are currently owned by the Albany County Convention Authority. Those properties were going to be, we were going to receive benefit from that at some point in time, which has never occurred. So when you look at this, yes, this is a much diminished property, much smaller beneficiary, and the major beneficiary was Joe Nicola's hotel. Until there was a real squawk about that, we were going to actually have to pay for the connection way from his hotel to the convention center. The only thing close to this that you could say where local government's helping is the Javits Center, Jacob Javits Center in New York, much different facility, much different benefit is to go. So there is nobody else paying any of their hotel and occupancy taxes to subsidize a state facility as we are.
Is the only way to reverse that through state legislation?
Well, yeah, actually, the interesting thing is that State legislation really can't do anything about the first 3 points. It's the second 3 points that you can actually have impact on. Sometime early June, they're going to be voting on that. There is a resolution in front of you, and I think that it's to extend to give them the 3 points. If you don't send that to them, then it's not there. But there was no real negotiations to do that when it occurred, and that's how we got into the situation.
So if you don't send that to them, do you keep that, or does it just disappear?
It goes away.
And so we wouldn't be collecting that additional amount of money for the hotel and occupancy tax?
Correct.
So that tax would go down?
That tax would go down, and the state authorities have a little difficulty, but they turned a profit last year, and I think we're subsidizing the state facility.
So that tax basically subsidizes the state and doesn't help us at all?
Correct. It did help us for a number of years while this is being constructed. In fairness, I want to make sure that you understand that.
I do. Thank you.
Just a comment and then a question. The comment is just a little bit of caution on the idea that you would potentially look at a solution of carving out the healthiest Medicaid beneficiaries and put them in the county health plan. Because, and I'm sure you understand how insurance works, but you're basically going to leave all of the bad risk behind, and what is likely to happen is all the managed care companies that contract for services for a sicker Medicaid population are going to increase their rates dramatically. So just big caution on doing that.
I agree with the overall observation that there is already an issue with that happening. You do have an adverse selection going on now. If you look at what ACA has done and what's happening in the Department of Health on that, you have people who are applying for it after they've been injured or had an illness come up. So that's one of the reasons carriers are backing away and rates are going up. So Mike Connors is sick for 3 months out of 12 and he waits 9 months for Mike Connors to apply for coverage, which is what's happening today. The insurance marketplace misses the 9 months premium. That's why rates are adversely affected. I think one of the other things that if you look at a waiver like this, you want to do a small enough pilot project to look at it to see if it has a positive impact. And you run it through the Medicaid program as well. But it doesn't make sense to me to have a greater benefit level on Medicaid for a healthy Medicaid recipient than you have for a county employee or for a taxpayer in Albany County. That's why I think it bears some investigation.
Right, no, I understand. I just would suggest a lot of caution because anytime
absolutely.
you carve out adverse risk and put it in one pool, those, first of all, insurance companies might not be even interested in that population anymore. My question is your comment about the fact that Albany County is viewed as a unfriendly business climate. Can you provide what data was there a survey done that was recent about what businesses think, or is that just anecdotal?
I think it's anecdotal. It's based on a lot that I read in the Times Union and in the Business Review. I think there's also been some discussion from the Albany County Chamber of Commerce as well.
Okay, but no survey data has been done with.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay,
but that plus other things that we've done have created a climate where we put ourselves at a disadvantage in comparison to other counties.
Great, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Connors, I'm just still a little bit confused about the hotel motel, the hot tax. Are you recommending that we don't vote for that? Because would Albany County residents be better off if we didn't vote for it?
As a former legislator, I have a hard time not identifying as a legislator. And again, I want to say it's control. I wouldn't advocate for you to take a position. I think that's a legislative discussion. I can point out to you what has to happen and what can happen. I mean, it would seem to me that we would have been in a better negotiating position had we advocated to the state that, look, we don't have to pass this second 3 points. You can't put legislation in without a home rule message. I don't believe that negotiation took place. That's a consideration for the legislature. You can can always have a special meeting if you have to, if you decide, you know, all right, let's say they say they're gonna give us one of the points back or whatever the number is. The reason I bring that up to you is that you're gonna be paying debt service over the next 16, 18 years on a facility where you're going to lose $90 million net on what you're paying for that. You've got a $19 million additional loan plus the other debt service you're paying on that facility that you used to pay that debt service with hotel
Just
occupancy
to be
tax.
clear though, are you saying that what we were getting before is 3%, okay? They're not gonna get it all?
No, what I'm suggesting, if you, again, that's up to the legislature to consider. The 6 points that's currently authorized under law.
Right.
And there was a period of time, I'm gonna say 9 months or more, where we didn't extend it, we didn't collect it, several years ago. That if you were to negotiate more difficultly with the state, say, look, this isn't fair, we have debt service we have to pay. There are other alternatives to this. You know, I think that it's something you need to know about. That's why I brought it up.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Connor, just to be clear, the home rule resolution is for the full 6%. It's not for, 3% after you
Right.
get 3%. Are you saying there's no sunset on the initial 3%?
The initial 3% was not sunsetted. That legislation 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, folded that in, which weakened your negotiating positions severely. We brought that up to the legislature, actually, at a finance meeting. I was asked directly, will you be able to pay the debt service? I said, yes, if you have a hot tax. And you're not gonna have a hot tax, so you're gonna have difficulty with the debt service.
So the sunset's only on the last 3%?
Well, on that bill, they wrapped it together. So you've got a decision.
Well, that's a big problem because it's a full 6, not just 3.
Right. That's where the state legislature control the barrel. I'll give you another example, no offense. The same thing happened to us when we put the original sales tax bill. We put a sales tax bill in to make it permanent. The state changed it to make it 18 months, so they had trade items for the state towns and counties and cities and villages to get that revenue. So they had a trade item that they used in budget negotiation. So that's exactly what's happened to that. But you're going to have difficulties in the coming year. I would assume the legislature acts that you need to know you're going to have a hole of a couple $1 million alone in that transaction. I want to make sure you're aware of that.
On the sales tax holiday we're considering, we got emails on it. What's the hit to the county on the revenue on that?
Dollars, you really can't, they don't break sales tax revenue receipts into retail or anything like that, but it's not a huge number. You're talking about a week or a weekend, I believe. You're not talking about a huge amount of money. You've done it before. The county is going in and out on this on a number of occasions.
About what is it? Give me a guess.
I'm not going to give you that because I don't know. And I don't think anyone's been to it. I know there's a discussion, give us a number, you should be able to give us a number. I can't even tell you what the number of the increase is because the increased price of gasoline. We'll know that on July 19th when we get the results for this quarter. But right now, I wouldn't hazard it. So you could look at, the bad news is gasoline tax is going up because gas prices are going up. You may decide you want to do that. On the retail side, it's just for clothing and apparel, I believe, and shoes, I think also.
Right. It's not what the gas is going away.
Yes, that.
You have one more question. Mr. Graham, last question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Key Center is $90 million. There's a $90 million subsidy that
To the facility, that's correct.
the taxpayers have to pay, and that's, because every year we hear, well, that, there's an operating, they have an operating win every year. But that's just saying strictly an operational cost. The real cost is being subsidized up to the tune of $90 million.
Yes, and if I can break that into two answers on two questions. When the original contract was proposed by SMG with the county and then amended the last time we talked about selling the facility, the calculations of net operating profit excluded from that calculation the debt service. And our office's argument back then was that's like saying that you're
budget's great, but you don't have to pay your taxes or your mortgage. So that's not included. So when you look at this, when we finish paying for present debt, and I'm not, who knows what else is going to be added on, or what other repairs you're going to need as time goes on, but you'll pay over $175 million. When you add together all of the hot tax money that we received, even those years we got more than our share because they hadn't finished the building, and you put in 25 or 24 million, whatever it might have been for the SMG monies, the difference between the SMG money plus the hotel occupancy tax money leaves our taxpayers paying $90 million for a facility which I don't believe we really got in the business of running.
Now, you said there was a zero transfer for the nursing home,
This year, 2017.
and then years ago, there was multi-million.
Oh yeah, before we went with a private sector operator, and a lot of improvements have been made since then, but there were years the transfer was well over $12, $15 million a year. 2 years ago, I think it was $4.2 million or $4.3 million.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.